Hello and welcome to April's book review. I feel like I've got my reading mojo back a bit this month, which has been fun and I've got really into it. I don't know whether the long Easter weekend or the fact that we haven't had as much to do this month has helped, but either way I've really got into it. So I have 6 books to talk to you about today. I also have been using a random number generator this month to decide what I've been reading. So I filmed each time I've selected a book, so we'll add those in as well. Before we get going, I just want to point out I've actually had a haircut for the first time in a year and a half. So the following videos that you're going to see are pre-haircut, as always. I'm filming this on the 23rd of April, so there's still about a week of April left, so I might get another book in before the end of the month. But the way that my Wednesday schedules go, it just makes more sense for me to put it up slightly earlier than it being like 2 weeks late kind of thing. And also we now have the bookshelves. If you haven't seen the video where I start putting books on it and stuff, I'll add that up in the card. But because I don't have a chair or anything, I have to sit on the floor, and the lower shelves are obviously the empty ones. It is all full above me. Let's move on from that sort of ramble and start with the first book, which is the one I finished at the end of March, and that was Hollowpox, The Hunting of Morgan Crow. And this is by Jessica Townsend. This is the 3rd in the Nevermore series. It's been a little while since I've read it, let's be honest, but this one, without giving too much away, there's an illness called Hollowpox, and I very much liked the aspects of that, but I feel like it wasn't really the central point to this. I got a bit worried that we were getting into a bit teenage angst of Morgan's character, and it's always quite frustrating in series like this when you get to that sort of they know best, they want to push everyone away kind of time in those series, and I was worried that we were getting into that with this one. I would have preferred if we'd focused a bit more on the illness, to be honest, because I found those parts very, very interesting and a clever kind of concept and way to take this series, because it did also add more character and more character building to our baddie. And on that, I'm very much enjoying the sort of drip feeding of some of the characters throughout the 3 books, because I don't feel we've got all the information and all of the things we need to be making a decision on any of the characters in this series. You get little bits each time, and I find that very interesting, and it is very much a reason why I'd like to carry on with the series. I believe the 4th book comes out this year, so I won't be reading that soon, because I'm a paperback kind of gal. I really do enjoy the sort of magic system in this world. I think all of the people with a knack, as they call it, are just very interesting and what they can do, and the sort of found family part of this came through a lot in this book, more so than some of the others, and that was also very enjoyable. So on the whole, very much enjoying the Nevermore series. Would like to carry on when subsequent books come out in paperback, and yeah, would recommend. So that's Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. So before I went into doing my random number generated thing, I did want to read my Buzzwordathon book of the month, and this month the prompt was emotions. So I read Anxious People by Fredrick Backman. This is, I mean, everybody knows who he is now. He's the guy that wrote A Man Called Ove. I think that's now been changed into a film with Tom Hanks called The Man Called Otto, because, you know, Western places can't have a name that is different, so we've gone with Otto for that film. I've not seen that yet, but I have read the book, and I enjoyed it, that one, so I thought I'll give this one a go. So it's a Swedish translation. I can't remember who the translator is, unfortunately. I read it on my Kindle, hence the picture here. And this one follows a bank robbery gone wrong turned into a hostage situation, but not how you would expect it. And I like how all of the information was sort of drip fed to the reader. and it doesn't go in ways that you sort of anticipate it to. Yeah, there was a lot of turns that I wasn't quite expecting, but there was something about this book that I didn't like absolutely love it. I enjoyed it and I thought it was good, but I didn't absolutely love it and think it was great. I think I gave it 3.5 stars in the end. And I think that's partly because I just don't really connect with Fredrick Backman's characters very much. I found it with a man called Uwe, I found it with this one. Although I'm enjoying the story and I'm enjoying the characters, I don't have any connection with them. And there were definite sections and definite characters that we're following, because there's a lot of people that we follow in this book, where the parts dragged quite a bit. The parts where we were in the sort of bank robbery hostage bit were better than when we were looking at the past and how we got to certain situations and how certain people got into being part of the hostage situation. I didn't like those quite so much. And then obviously we had the perspective of the police who were trying to deal with the situation, and I also wasn't a huge part of that. So I guess that's why I wasn't overly keen on it, because like 60% of the book I wasn't fully enjoying, although I was enjoying. It's a bit of a difficult one to talk about. It was also one of those books that felt like it ended about 4 times, which is always a bit frustrating. So I do like Fredrick Backman. I think I've got another one on my Kindle, so I will read that at some point, but I don't think I'm going to actively search out his books. I don't think his writing style is completely for me. Again, I don't know whether it being a translation is part of that, or whether it's just the type of book and the style of book. As I said, I won't search them out, but I won't say no to them if they came into my possession, kind of thing. They're enjoyable enough, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that was Anxious People by Fredrick Backman. Then we get into the books that were picked by the random number generator, so I'll add the first one in now. So I've been wanting to do this for days, but I've been trying to be restrained. But my brother's coming for Easter tomorrow. It's currently the 5th of April. So my brother's coming to stay for Easter. He's going to be in this room, because this is also our guest room as well as where all my books are. So I need to get my next book now, because he's going to be in there when I finish it, because I'm due to finish it on Thursday, tomorrow in fact. I'm going to number generate, and then the number that corresponds to from this shelf is what I'm going to read next. And for some reason that really excites me. So I'm just going to count how many I've got. Hang on. So we've got 1, 2, 3. 36. Now if I'm clever and I've learnt how to do it, I'm going to try and record my screen so you can see that here, see what the number is, and then we can work out what the book is. So bear with me. So I want 1, 2, what did I say, 36? I hope I said 36 because I can't remember. Generate 18. So we are going to be reading The Heart Principle next by Helen Hoang. Exciting. That was fun. So as you've seen, we got The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. This is the 3rd book in that sort of companion series that starts with the Kiss Quotient and then the Bride Test and then this one. These are romance books essentially, and in this one we're following Anna and Quan. Quan is the brother of Michael in the Bride Test, cousin of, I can't remember who in the Kiss Quotient, Michael was it? And I really like that character throughout those 2 books, and was quite excited when I heard that we were going to get a book solely for his romance story. And the reason I like him is because he always seems to like tune into people's emotions. He always seems to be there. He seems like quite a solid character. He's the kind of guy that you'd want to go to, even though he was a bit of a player. Let me caveat, this is probably my favourite book that I read this month. But again, it fell a little bit short. He is in this book, he is the main male lead in it, but we're mainly getting it from Anna's perspective. She is autistic, as there tends to be a character in Helen Hoang's book with that. She's struggling quite a bit, and then something in her family happens that means she has to sort of drop things and go and do something that maybe doesn't come quite naturally to her anyway. And Guan is there as her love interest, We get all of the characteristics that I've already said about him. We do get to hear a little bit about his life since the bride test, but I do feel like more could have been done with his character, and I was a little disappointed that it wasn't because I liked him so much in the other books. Having now read all three, I do think they're a little bit samey. We do follow similar storylines. I do think it's good that we're getting the perspective of these characters and that there is that kind of representation in novels, but I do find that Helen Hoang sort of writes the same structure, the same book each time, although this did have probably a bit more of a narrative to it than just sort of the smut that we come to expect from these books. And this probably has a deeper story to it, less of the fluffy romance that people might expect, and this cover is very misleading. This does not portray anything that's in the book, it has to be said. And I'm so glad that the characters in this actually communicated with each other. I am getting a bit fed up of the miscommunication trope. It's never been one of my favourites. So it was refreshing that these two characters actually spoke about what was going on and their feelings and etc, 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 even if it was difficult at times. The thing that I really like about Helen Hoang's book are her author's notes at the end. She tends to write things that are semi-autobiographical, stuff that's happened in her own life. She is autistic, so she can write as own voices. How accurate, I don't know, as I'm not. But her author's notes always make the book make a lot more sense, and you can understand why she's written what she's written and the feelings and the characteristics and stuff that have come out through them. So very much recommend reading the author's notes at the end of the story. They really do add to what you're reading. So as I say, did enjoy it. It is a probably more meaningful book than the other two, if that's the word I'm looking for, and probably my favourite read of the month, as I said. But there were things that I would have changed to make this a 5-star read. So that's The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. Hello, right, we're back for roll 2 on the old random number generator. Since the last one, I've put in all the books from my parents' house, so that's why the background is slightly different, and we also now have 37 books on the physical TBR to random generate. I think it was 36 last time, so I can't remember, but something like that. So I'm going to record my screen again and then we can see which book we've got coming up. So let's go. 4. Okay, that's that one can't happen because that is the Christmas murder game, so we're going to go for that in December. So we'll go again. 25. Okay, cool. We are now going to go with we're going to go with An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. So from a romance-ish, we go to a thriller. Cool. So the magic numbers then picked An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. This is a book that I picked up when I did a little rummage through the books at my dad's church. I'll link that video up above. I think it's the one where me and Pete went on a spa day as well, if you're interested in that. I was quite glad that the numbers picked one of these because I did want at some point in this month to have one of the books I picked up on that trip to be read, because I haven't actually touched any of them, I don't think. So this is a thriller. We're in it's like a locked room mystery, remote setting, people can't get out. So this is following, I can't remember how many people, 8, 10 people who come to a remote sort of hotel for the weekend, but then there's a snowstorm, the power goes, and then murders start happening. This has a very Agatha Christie feel to it, which I quite like. I do quite like that kind of mystery, so that made it enjoyable for me. But as I said, there are a lot of characters and it was a little hard to keep track of all of them and their backstories and etc, etc, etc. But it was a very easy book to read. The text is pretty big. It was quite a pacey thriller, so it did move along quite well. But I did guess the twist. fairly early on as well, and that's very unlike me. I like to try and be a bit blasé about these things and not try and work them out, even though, I mean, your brain naturally goes there, but I try not to lean into that too much because I like it to just sort of unravel and unfurl in front of me. But I did guess this one. So either I've read similar books in the past or it was just very obvious. So take of that what you want. This only covers a weekend, obviously, this book. We were like 350 pages. Yeah, 352 pages. I feel like we waited for the police for a little too long. I think it was a smidge too long, that section. But on the whole, very much enjoyed this book. Would definitely read more from this author. And yeah, it was nice to have something completely different to follow on. Which sometimes when I pick my own books, I end up reading sort of similar things because I try and do that within the month, either consciously or subconsciously. But yes, that was An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. Right, we're back. Same jumper, hair up because I'm about to go and clean the house, but I need to know what I'm reading next. So as usual, let's do this. Right, so 36 books. I haven't added any this time. 32. Okay, definitely not one that I would have picked at all. We are going to read The Voyages of Dr. Doolittle next. So of all the books that the numbers could have picked, I then ended up with The Voyages of Dr. Doolittle, which, let's be honest, was not one that I wanted to read this month, or soon, to be frank. This would have sat on my shelf for a long time, so I guess in hindsight or whatever, it's probably a good thing that the numbers did pick this. But yeah, wasn't what I was expecting to be reading. But then I guess having something randomly generated for you, that's what's going to happen. So this is one of those Puffin modern classics that came in that box set that I did a sort of 48-hour reading challenge with, so I'll link that video up above if you're interested. This is one of the ones I obviously didn't get to and is the longest book I read this month, and the longest one in that box set at 396 pages, which, let's be honest, is too long for this kind of book. It turns out this is the second in a series. I don't know why the box set put the second in a series in there, but we're following Dr. Doolittle, who can obviously speak to the animals, as he goes on one voyage, so the S needs to come off of this book. This was written in 1922, so there are obviously some issues with it, shall we say, in terms of white saviour complexes and colonialism and all of that, but I'm pretty sure my edition is edited because I read some reviews after I read it, and there is a character from Africa that I think in unedited copies you get some racial slurs in there, which I didn't get in this version, which, to be frank, I was quite happy with, but I'm pretty sure it was edited because of what I read there. This is split into like 6 parts, which makes the book a bit disjointed because we are following just one story. I don't know why we just didn't follow chapters. I don't know whether that's how it was released or what, but it did feel a bit just disjointed, and I have to say that for me this book is of 2 halves. The first chunk, so the first half of it, where they're preparing for their voyage and they've just set off and we're in Spain, I actually quite enjoyed it, and I was surprised about how much I was enjoying it. I liked the whole court case bit and Dr. Doolittle having to translate for a dog. I liked the bit with the bullfight in Spain, and I was on board with it. But then we got into the voyage proper, and that's when I got bored. So if I'd left it at Spain, I would have quite enjoyed this book and possibly would have been recommending it to you, but because of the second half, which did drag somewhat, I'm not sure I would. Dr. Doolittle does have a huge respect for animals, which I think comes through in this book. He has a want to understand them, so it's not that like the Eddie Murphy film where he gets like magical powers to talk to animals. He is actually learning to talk to the animals. He is spending the time to learn their language. And all of that, again, I quite liked. I quite liked the sort of concept behind it. I just got bored partway through. So overall, probably the worst book that I read this month, and one that will be going straight on the unhaul pile. So that is The Voyages of Dr. Doolittle by Hugh Lofting. We're back so soon. As you've seen about Dr. Doolittle, it didn't take me very long to read. So we're back with the phone. We now have 35, but the problem that we've got now is that I've essentially planned out a lot of these books for other readathons and stuff like that. So we'll see. Right, let's just get the number. 10. So what it's picked is the second book in the, I don't know what this series is called, Place Called Perfect, the Helena Duggan series. I was going to read the first one next month as part of a readathon, but I guess I can swap that to the second, and then we can read the first one now, and that would still fit everything. Does that seem fair? We're going to go with it. My game, my rules. We're going to go with A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan as the next book to read. Again, not one I was expecting or was planning for. Like, literally the one next to it is the one that I was hoping would come up, but alas. We go with where the numbers take us. So there we go, on to another middle grade book, A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan. This is the first book in a trilogy, and I was planning on reading it as part of a readathon for next month, which obviously I'll explain towards the end of the book. But as it's a trilogy and I have all three, I figured I could read the first one and then maybe read the second one as part of that instead. So this follows Violet, who moves to a town called Perfect. They're there because her dad is a famous... he's not an optician. He's the other one, an ophthalmologist? Have I made that up? Anyway, he's good with eyes. So they want him to come to the town because everybody's gone blind and they have to wear these rose-tinted glasses. But all is not what it seems, and Violet meets Boy, and together they have to go on an adventure and discover what's going on in the town of Perfect. This, for a middle grade, is quite dark and creepy. If you've read or seen Coraline, it had very much that kind of feel to it. I bet Tim Burton would have loved to make this into a film if he ever got his hands on it. It has that feel to it. And yeah, it is quite creepy at points, and was kind of tense as well at certain sections, which surprised me because I'm obviously not the target audience. This is aimed at like 9 to 12 year olds or 8 to 12 year olds. I'm 32, but I got into this book quite a lot. It is quite obvious from the start what all of the things are that's causing stuff. Again, I don't know whether that's just my age or the writing or what. So I got it within the first couple of chapters, but the characters took 200 pages to understand these things. But unlike the sort of Shari Lapena thriller-esque one, that didn't really make a difference when reading this. Just because I knew what was going on didn't mean that the story was worse off for it. Does that make sense? But again, this was a very easy read for me. I sped through it quite quickly, partly because I just wanted to know what happened. I very much enjoyed coming back to it each night to read my next sort of section of it and see how Violet and Boy were getting on. And I really did like the touch of the rose-tinted glasses. If you've read it, you understand what I'm talking about, but the fact that they were rose-tinted just amused me. So this is very much a book about friendship and family and bravery and imagination and all of the things that I very much enjoyed in it. And I look forward to picking up the next two over the course of this year. So that was A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan. So as I said earlier, it's in front of me, that I probably have time to read one more book. So I thought I would do my spin, my random number with you on this video. So we now have 35 again because I happened to buy a book yesterday. You'll see it in an upcoming video. So I'm just going to screen record and then we can generate and see what book we're coming up to next. So let's go. 28. So we are moving on to A Vintage Friendship by Kathy Hopkins. I mentioned that my mum had given me 2 books in my Easter video. Again, I'll link that up here if I can. So this is one of the ones that she gave me. So it looks like I'm moving on to that, which is probably slightly longer than I would have wanted as my last read, but hey ho, that's what we're doing. So there you go, that was my bumper April what I read book review. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. As said, I feel like I've got my mojo back a bit. I don't know whether it's just the types of books I was reading, the lengths of books I was reading, the time, I don't know. But doing it with a random number generator it's been fun. I've had a lot of excitement finding out what I'm going to read next and that anticipation, although I've struggled a little bit not knowing what was coming up, because I have been trying to wait until I've finished the book until I get the next one. But taking out the March book, it has given me very much a mix of genres and titles, and I probably wouldn't have picked up any of these this month if it was just down to me. Next month, as I said, I'm taking part in a readathon. I'm doing the Royal, is it called the Royal Readathon, which is looking at the Disney eras, so each of the prompts are related to that. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll let you know what I read for that and about A Vintage Friendship in that one. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. Obviously, as I said, more books, more things, more fun coming up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!